right, everybody. Good evening. All right, let's try it again. Listen, in a Jamaican household, when you say good evening, you got to say it back. Good evening, everybody. Ooh, the energy is great today. All right, everyone, welcome to the People's Forum. I'm so excited for today's panel, A Subterranean Fire, Building a Fighting Labor Movement. And if you know about TPF, you know that culture plays a huge role in our movement here. We know that culture is what sustains us and nurtures us as people in struggle. And particularly in our courses, you know, we begin every single class with a song, a video of some sort, something to really get us in the spirit of study and struggle, am I right? So I have a treat today. Normally we have a video, but today we actually have a live performance by Lingua Franca, a Georgia-based organizer, parent, linguist, rapper, and ultimately a leader in our movement. They organize with the Union of Southern Service Workers. So give it up for Lingua Franca.
Let me hear you say, build the future, build the future, build the union, build the union, build the future. Build the union. And if the boss is in the way, we're gonna roll it over him, gonna roll it over him, gonna roll it over him. If the boss is in the way, we're gonna roll it over him, we're gonna roll the union on. If the boss is in the way, we're gonna roll it over him, gonna roll it over him. If the boss is in the way, we're gonna roll it over him, we're gonna roll the union on. Ain't gonna let nobody turn us down, turn us round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn us round, turn us round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn us round, turn us round. We gonna roll the union on. Ain't gonna let nobody turn us round, turn us round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn us round, turn us round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn us round, turn us round. We gonna roll the union on. We're gonna roll, we're gonna roll, we're gonna roll the union on. We're gonna roll, we're gonna roll, we're gonna roll the union on. Because there ain't no mountain high enough. Let me hear you say, ain't no valley low enough. Everybody say, river wide enough to keep us from building a movement. Everybody, let me hear you say, ain't no mountain high enough. Ain't no valley low enough. Ain't no river wide enough to keep us from building a movement. Make some noise for yourselves one time. TPF, how y'all feeling tonight? Are y'all feeling good? Are y'all feeling mighty? Are y'all feeling powerful? Y'all feeling some love in your heart? Y'all feeling some joy in your bones? I have a quick question though. That joy in your heart, did the boss put it there? And can the boss take it away? This joy in my heart, the boss didn't give it to me. This joy in my heart, the boss didn't give it to me. This joy in my heart, the boss didn't give it to me. The boss didn't give it, the boss can't take it away. This vision in my mind, the boss didn't give it to me. This vision in my mind, the boss didn't give it to me. This vision in my mind, the boss didn't give it to me. The boss didn't give it, boss can't take it away. Hands up, hands up, hands up. There's power in my hands, the boss didn't give it to me. This power in my hands, the boss didn't give it to me. Everybody at home too. This power in my hands, the boss didn't give it to me. The boss didn't give it, the boss can't take it away. Now everybody keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up at home too. I need you to look to your left and to your right. And if you at home, you need to look at me. I'm looking at you. And say, without my hands and without your hands, nothing runs in this country. I said, without my hands and without your hands, nothing runs in this country. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's build the future.
Oh my heavens. I'm riled up. Anybody else riled up? Oh, y'all are riled up. Let me ask you a question. Has anybody heard the slogan, union power, soul power? All right, if you haven't, go do your research on Local 1199. And actually, if you like that, there's a shirt that Labor on the Line has that literally has that slogan, union power, soul power, because we know that soul power is what keeps us going. All right, give it up for Lingua Franca. Oh, thank you. Okay, unfortunately, I can't do my intro in a musical style, so I'm just going to read it, if that's okay. All right, everybody, welcome to our panel tonight, A Subterranean Fire, Building a Fighting Labor Movement. This is the final event in our course, Let Them Tremble. Has anyone been taking the course? Raise your hand if you're a part of that course. Awesome, amazing. All right, so in this course, hundreds of people gathered across the country spanning industries and geography to come together to study this historic and contemporary landmarks, battles, and figures shaping the labor movement historically and today. We began the course by diving into and actually defining what the labor movement is, because we know that the labor movement isn't just a strike here or a picket there, but it's a long history of peaks and valleys, wins and attacks, and ultimately, working people putting forward and fighting for a vision of society. We studied key moments and victories in labor history, the general strike of enslaved people that dealt the final blow to the slaveocracy in the South, to the 1934 West Coast waterfront strike, where over 150,000 longshoremen in every West Coast port walked out, to the wave of teacher strikes in the recent 2010s, where teachers from Denver, Chicago, literally dozens of states across this country, walked out and demanded that actually our working conditions are your students' learning conditions. We studied the legacy of labor struggles in the South, from the sharecropper unions and the multiracial unions that not only fought back and won, but really waged a fierce struggle against Jim Crow policies and completely reshaped the trajectory and possibilities of struggle in the United States. And when we know that when the bosses recognizes that the workers were getting, a taste of our power, the bosses retaliated with vicious attacks like the Taft-Hartley Act, the chilling effects of McCarthyism, and, of course, the Reagan administration attacks, as we saw with the 1981 PATCO strike and that horrible crushing. But we know that workers have never backed down. And if anything, we come back together even stronger and we fight even harder. Am I right? Yes. We know that the power of the organized working people, united under a fighting vision and a fighting spirit, we will win. Are we gonna win? Yes. Exactly. And I'm so excited today because two of our speakers, we've gathered really some of the most dynamic leaders in this course, and tonight I'm very honored to welcome two of the people that embody that fighting spirit, Sara Nelson and Jimmy Williams, Jr. Give it up. Excellent. Sara Nelson has been the international president of the Association of Flight Attendants, CWA, representing nearly 55,000 flight attendants across 20 airlines since 2014. She has been a union flight attendant since 1996 when she started flying United. Sara has become one of the most recognizable and uncompromising voices in the labor movement, consistently defending workers across industries, and is an organizer who brings moral clarity and fire wherever she is. I'm excited to also welcome Jimmy Williams, Jr., who was elected as the youngest ever president of the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, which represents more than 140,000 construction workers, finishers, glaziers, and craftspeople across the US and Canada since 2021. A third-generation union painter, he has become known for reshaping IUPAT into a union that is unafraid, let me say that one more time, unafraid to take bold political positions, fight wage theft, challenge anti-worker contractors, and build a generation of young militant rank-and-file leaders. Right? And lastly, but not least, moderating this discussion is Hussein Karimi. Hussein is an organizer, educator, and journalist, and as editor-in-chief of Labor on the Line, his work centers on labor strategy and bringing in and training young people in the labor movement. So when I tell you, we are up for a treat tonight, we are up for a treat. All right. So Without further ado, let's welcome Sara, Jimmy, and Hussein to the stage. Give it up.
Testing. Can y'all hear me okay? All right, and then, yeah, I think you have to turn your mics on. Great.
We have to turn them on.
Okay, you got it. Boom. Easy. Thank you so much, Saidi. And one more round of applause for Lingua Franca. My God. And I think we'll be blessed with a closing performance, too, which is very much looking forward to that. First of all, just want to say how happy and honored it is to be joined by the two of you. It's really an amazing way to cap off this 6-part course on the labor movement in the United States. I want to say a few words to just frame what we want to accomplish here, but first want to thank the staff at TPF, the education department, Lyndon, Saidi, Leanne, the tech team, and also the staff and volunteers from On the Line that together help make this course a reality. So thank you both. You know, when I was thinking about what to open with around the political moment, there's like a lot of analysis we can do, which I'm sure we'll dig into over the course of the conversation and in the Q&A, but I'd be remiss to not open with North Carolina. Do people, just as a show of hands, are people following what's happening in North Carolina right now? A lot of people here do. It's not dissimilar to the situation in Chicago over the last, 3 months since the announcement of Operation Midway Blitz. Last week, the Trump administration announced Operation Charlotte's Web that would send ICE and Customs and Border Patrol to raid and tear apart immigrant workers from their families in North Carolina. And it started in Charlotte, but really expanded into Durham, into Raleigh, into Western North Carolina, where that thug Greg Bavino is from. And the reason I bring it up isn't just to say how bad it is, it's because the resistance in North Carolina is incredible. It's incredibly inspiring. Over the last week, since the announcement of Charlotte's Web, thousands upon thousands of people have been flooding the streets in North Carolina across the entire state. And I saw a video, just 20,000 over the course of the week. On Monday, I believe it was, 20,000 students didn't show up to school. 20,000 students, that's like a quarter of the student body in the Triangle area of North Carolina. And it wasn't just passive, not just out of fear. I mean, that's maybe how it started, but then over the course of the week, these mass student walkouts started building. The students started organizing walkouts. And a lot of the student population in North Carolina, particularly in Charlotte and in the Triangle, are Black and Latino youth. And you see these videos of young Black students and young Latino students walking out together in a show of unity. Across all neighborhoods of North Carolina where there are ICE raids, there are dozens, if not hundreds, of neighbors who are coming out and filming ICE and telling them to get out of their neighborhood. Like really expelling them from their neighborhood. The same sort of level of defiance as what happened in Chicago. And the reason why I bring it up is that we know Trump's policies are so unpopular. They're so unpopular, and as a result, there's tons of resistance all across the country. North Carolina is just one recent example. October 18th, I think, is worth bringing up, the last No King's Day, when 7 million people took to the streets in the biggest day of protest, arguably, in U.S. history. Yet, the attacks keep coming, and it's part and parcel of the strategy of Project 2025 that Russell Vought outlined of flooding the zone, to attack on so many different fronts, all at once, at such a pace, to make them appear invincible. And so, as a consequence, the movement has been raising the question, how do we not only defeat these attacks, I mean, obviously in the immediate defeat these attacks, but also how do we win? Not just go, because people aren't, just wanting to go back to the status quo of a year ago. People want a different type of society, which again, we'll dig into. And that's the context in which to bring it full circle here, that's the context in which we put this course together, to offer a solution by recovering the history of how the working class, when organized, is enormously powerful and is responsible for basically every progressive change in this country. So for all the people who want to make change in this country, which I think is a shared desire of everyone in this room, big or small, we should all be concerned with the question of how do we bring organization and build organization among the group of people who make society run and who are thus capable of transforming it entirely. And that brings us to the question of the labor movement. Over the last 5 sessions, we focused on labor history, which is super important because it defines what's possible. It gives us reference points. But today, we want to talk about the here and now and the future. What's ahead? What type of labor movement can we and must we build in order to make the changes that we all know are necessary? And I can't think of 2 better people to speak on that topic than Sara Nelson and Jimmy Williams for all the reasons that Saidi mentioned. So with all that context aside, I want to start with something a bit more autobiographical because people know the 2 of you lead unions together that represent over 200,000 workers and know your titles, but may not know your why you fight stories. And so to start, I want to ask, what is it that brought you into the labor movement? And maybe we can start with Sara and then move to Jimmy.
Okay. Are we on? Yes. Right on. So I grew up in Oregon, and my mom was a teacher. She had a union contract, but we didn't talk about that in the house. So when I went to school, I decided that I wanted to be a teacher too, and I was going to be a secondary English teacher. I was finishing up college, looking at my student loans that were due, and trying to make ends meet until I would start my teaching career in the fall. And I was struggling. I was waiting tables. I was working at a temp agency and filing healthcare claims for a healthcare insurance company, and those files kept getting bigger and bigger. Denied. People had to be very aggressive to even get their healthcare coverage. I saw that back then, and also working at a home store so I could get a discount, and also doing substitute teaching. And I was thinking about how I was going to get enough money to actually make my classroom a place where kids could learn too, because that was not something that was covered by the school district. And so I got a call from a friend who had become a flight attendant, and she was calling from Miami on a snowy day in St. Louis. And she razzed me about the fact that she had her feet in the sand. I was like, stop it, you bee. And then she said, actually, Sara, this job is no joke. And she described the pay and the flexibility and the health care that had been negotiated by women, so it actually covered women's health care needs, and a pension that we could take at age 50. And at 23, working those 4 jobs, it was the pension that made me get in my car the next day and drive to Chicago to interview with United Airlines. But they sent me to Boston after 7 weeks of unpaid training. And we had to get an apartment as a group, and we did in the North End, and 7 of us in this small little apartment, and set off on our flying career. And when it came time for the first paycheck to drop, I called up to see what was in my bank account, and there was nothing. And so I went into the office to say, somebody needs to help me. I didn't get my first paycheck. And they said, oh, we're sure you'll get it next time. People get their first paychecks at different times for different reasons. And I had been told during training, if you have a hair out of place, they can let you go. So I kept my mouth shut and tried to figure out how I was going to eat the next couple of weeks. And rent was coming due after the next payday. And so I made it through that time, but the day the paycheck was supposed to drop, I jump-seated, we call it, taking a flight attendant jump seat to Chicago and back so I could eat some plane food back when we used to serve it. And yeah. Landed and checked my bank account again. There's nothing in there. So I went down in the office and I said, somebody's got to help me. I didn't get my paycheck again. And they said, and the person behind the desk said, oh, you get your first paycheck at different times for different reasons. We're sure you get it next time. For the first time in my life, coming from a small town in Oregon, I felt like what it felt like to be a number in an HR file. Like, these people don't care about me at all. And I started to get a little bit hysterical because rent was due the next day. And my friends were counting on me for my portion of the rent. And I couldn't eat. And the tears started to roll. And all of a sudden, I had this tap on the shoulder, and I turned around, and there was someone standing there who looked a lot like me. I'd never met her before. I just remembered that she had her wings on and her union pin right above her wings. And she's holding her checkbook and asking me how to spell my name. She handed me a check for $800, and she said, number one, you take care of yourself, and number two, you call our union. And I did call our union. I had my paycheck the next day, but but I learned everything that I needed to know about being in the union in that moment, because in our unions, we are never alone. And through our unions, the way that we care for each other, we can make the most out of that and get the most out of it.
Yeah, for me, Hussein, it's a highly like familial thing. It was said in my bio that I was third generation in my union. I'm actually fourth. My great grandfather was a member of our union from the 1910s, right? So I grew up in a union household within my own union, same union, right? I got generations, I got cousins, uncles, you know, all sorts of relatives that I grew up in a union household and seen it firsthand, the difference that being in a union makes. And it was always preached to us, you know, at the dinner table, that everything we have is because of our union. And there was a moment, you know, in I was about 12 years old, 13 years old, and my uncle passed away. And my uncle was a labor leader in Philadelphia, my hometown. Don't hold that against me. And you know, I'll never forget being 12 years old, and I was a pallbearer in his funeral. And the people that stood on line to you know, see this man off, he was 62 years old, he died suddenly. I stood there until 3 o'clock in the morning. And it was people of all walks of life, right? You had people that my uncle probably could care less about. They were, you know, senators, governors, and they had no real impact, you know. It was more the average person. It was people that literally walked through in tears saying how much that man influenced their life. And I never, you know, I was 12 years old, 13 years old. I knew what my uncle did, but I didn't really know. But I remember sitting there going, man, if I could ever have any sort of impact that changes people's lives that much, that they're driven that emotionally, I wish I could do half of what this individual did. And the stories that you heard from people saying, you know, he went out of his way to take care of me when I was, you know, when I was down and out, and when I was down and out. So for me, it was very, like, generational. And I joined the union right out of high school. I didn't go to college. It was the thing that we did. It was just passed on from generation to generation. And join the trade, you know, get a trade and you're going to be good, because that's the way it works. And it worked for generations before me, and so it's got to work for me too. But the minute I joined our union, I seen both the good and the bad, and I seen everything from within and said, you know what? If I can do half of what my uncle did and what others had done to help people within our union, I would love to be able to do that. I never in a million years thought that my career would take me to where it has. And that's the thing about being an organizer and being in the labor movement. You just have zero clue where your career would go. You would never think in a million years you'd be sitting here in New York telling your story, right? I mean, that's just the truth. But the impact that people, you know, when you genuinely see that impact that people have by the strength of a union and through collective bargaining, how it changes generations. You know, for me, I look back, and I know your class talked a lot about labor history. I think back often about what it must have been like for my great-grandfather, a person I'd never met, but a person who worked 25 years before even the passage of the National Labor Relations Act. And I go, man, just imagine what that time period looked like for an immigrant worker coming to this country, trying to organize a union, trying to form a union in those economic conditions. And I go, wow, It's probably no different today. If not, it may be a little bit worse. And what progress have we really made? And that's the spirit and the fight that we try to bring within our union when we think about the change that we can make to help working people, right? And how important it is. And so for me, it just came at a very young age, and it was very generational, but it was never aspirational. You know, working within the labor movement, for me, it was never like, oh, I want to be somebody within the labor movement. It was always like, no, it's just what you do. You just help people, period.
Super powerful stories. I feel like it's so important to start with stories to ground us. And next question is also for well, I guess all the questions are kind of for both of you. We spent a lot of time in this course talking about the incredible power working class people have when we're organized and conscious. Can you talk about a specific time where you felt that really deeply in your union?
Yeah. So, also, Hussein, I just have to say, I'm just, as you were asking that question, I can't help but think the last time I saw you, you were interviewing me, and at the end of it, you said, what can I do to help out your union? And I gave you an assignment. I'm not going to say online what the assignment was, but I've given that assignment to many people, and Hussein did it. And because of it, our union's going to get a big win really soon. So, so I just want to say thank you for that. And also, it is like incredibly emotionally overwhelming and fortifying to be at the People's Forum with all of you. So I'm gonna note this one moment, and I know you gave me the questions ahead of time, and I had a different story plan, but this one I can't help it. This was in 2019. It was March of 2019. We found out that one of our members had been detained and was being held at a private prison by ICE, and she was a DACA recipient, and she had been flying for this small airline that flew to Mexico. So she was assigned to do a day trip, and she told her supervisor, I don't think I can do it because Trump had rescinded DACA, and when the courts reinstated it, there were provisions that were not reinstated, such as being able to work in and out of the country. And the supervisor checked the old rules and told her, no, you got to go. She was on probation, so they sent her. And we didn't find out that very day when she flew back, it was just a day trip down to Monterey and back. She was held at the airport in a holding cell for 24 hours, not able to call anyone, and then finally able to call someone, and then sent to this prison. And she was taught from a very young age, don't make waves, don't talk about it, just call your attorney and they'll deal with it. And the attorney finally realized that she needed to get help when they were told that her DACA status was going to be taken away and she was going to be deported. So we finally got word that this had happened. And we mobilized the union right away. And I'll just tell you that ever since November 6th of 2016, we had received almost daily from a few of our members, very, very, very direct messages about how the king had been elected president and we should bow down to the king. Anyway, and so when this happened, we pushed this out that this had happened to one of our members. And we got messages for the first time after all that time saying, I'm for strong immigration, but this is not okay. Because they could identify with the person who was being held. And it changed everything for their politics in that moment. We mobilized, we got her out within 18 hours, and we have helped her ever since, and she has legal status to be here. But I was very proud in that moment because also at that same time, flight attendants were standing up and refusing to fly flights that would facilitate the separation of families.
We have a very similar story that I was going to tell, and I'm not going to tell it, so I'm going to change, because we had a very, very similar story during Trump 1.0. Maybe later, we can dig in deeper on that. But to change, I can tell you, within our union, at least, construction unions are often considered very conservative, within the labor movement, very conservative. Over the years have been tagged as what you would say more working class white unions, which is not the case within our union, by the way. We're predominantly first and second generation immigrant workers in our union. But I think back to the moment, it was in 2020, right after COVID, when George Floyd was murdered in Minneapolis, very public. At the time, our movements were kind of stale, right? COVID really took that kind of fighting spirit away from us, where we couldn't be out on the streets. People were concerned. We were still in the middle of a global pandemic. And there was that day, and I think it was a Sunday, where Donald Trump, in an effort to get a public picture, pushed the protesters out of Lafayette Square to get a picture with the Bible, which, by the way, he held upside down, but pushed the protesters out. And Washington, D.C., at the time, reacted. And there was, anger on the streets. And one of the places where, which is right next door, right across the street from the White House, that those protesters vandalized was the AFL-CIO building, which is our building. That's labor's building. And at the time, I'm going, this is where labor needs to react, respond, and do something. And I looked around, and there was nothing for a day. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, this is our moment to support what is such an important thing for so many of our members. And at the time, I wasn't our national president. Our national president at the time was the first ever black general president of a building trades union in over 130 years, which is crazy to think of. And he was going, what are we going to do? What am I going to do? And I said, Ken, it ain't for you. His name was Ken. I said, it's not for you to do. It's for us to do on your behalf and show up. And we did. We mobilized our membership. We mobilized people to support what I believe was a turning point at a moment in time where Black Lives Matter was such an important discussion to have, not only within the general public, but within our unions. And I feel like we were able to have that discussion within our union because it was interesting. The pushback that we got from our members that are conservative oftentimes about why would you get involved in a fight that has nothing to do with our union? It says, ask your brother that you work with. Ask the person in your neighborhood that you work with. Oh, how about this? Ask your general president how he feels in this moment. And I saw more members come together and really fight for change. And I really think that was the catalyst within not just our movement, but within the progressive movement to put a nail in Donald Trump's coffin that first time. And I looked around, and I'm telling you, it was not easy to get labor leaders to stand up at a time where it should have been simple. That was simple. And so within our union, I believe it turned a corner where we could have a deeper conversation around immigration, where we could have a deeper conversation around women's rights and reproductive rights. And since then, we've been building upon it. And our union has engaged in fights well beyond what maybe we were willing to do for 130 years, and will continue to do that because of that moment.
I'm glad the two of you referenced to organizing campaigns that many don't necessarily associate unions to participate in as social movement organizations. A lot of people, even some union members, see their union as an outside legal entity. And my union is going to do this for me and help negotiate on my behalf my wages and benefits and working conditions. But unions are institutions of workers that have lives beyond, obviously within the job and issues within the job, but are affected by policies far beyond it. So I really appreciate you bringing up those two stories. going back to the political moment, and why don't we start with Jimmy and then go back to Sara? And feel free to talk about what you make of the moment, too. It feels like attacks from the Trump administration every day. And obviously, this whole course is about the labor movement. But the reality is that most people aren't in unions. In fact, 90% of the workforce isn't in unions. And for people who are involved in all the organizing, which is extremely powerful across the country, from Chicago to North Carolina to Los Angeles, every front of struggle, there's some resistance to it. It can, for some, I don't think the labor movement is irrelevant. I don't think anyone here feels that way because we wouldn't be here today, but for some may feel like a non-factor almost. So why does the labor movement matter in that picture, and what role should it be playing today?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the ultimate question for our movement, for the labor movement, is what role do we play? And I think the role we have played is the wrong role. And just being blunt and honest, yes, we are an institution that has to represent our membership. That's a given. That's what we do. We're good at it. But when you have less and less and less every single year, then you're representing less and less and less. You have to really figure out what the hell you're going to organize, right? And I think the time, and it was said in the intro, where we can't go back to what it looked like 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 10 years ago, 40 years ago, or even 70 years ago. We have to figure out a better way to organize the working class in general. Our labor laws are broken in this country. They are. There are so many people that want to organize their workplace because they've realized that the old way of doing business the last 70 years hasn't worked. And our movement needs to unite with movements that are organizing working people around that issue. Front and center, we have to bring it back. You think about what is the real vehicle for bringing social change. The labor movement is the only vehicle that has really made social change for working class people in our country's history. And we find ourselves at a moment that is different, where about 75 to 77% of the average worker views unions favorably, right? They view unions as the answer to their economic struggle. Gives us a moment of opportunity that doesn't come around every generation. Within our union, we talk about how Taft-Hartley was the single most destructive bill that was ever passed for working class people in this country. And the interesting part is that within our union, construction unions, in 1947, 87% of all construction workers were in a labor union. Since then, we've gone from 87% to 10% of the workforce. But what gives me hope is if you do the math, and I'm not great at math. Like I said, I'm a high school graduate. If 77% of people that want to be in a union and 10% already are, that's 87% of the working class that can be organized. But here's the issue. It's too hard. They've taken away every single right that workers have to organize in this country. And we have to learn how to unite to change labor laws fundamentally, because we were stronger prior to Taft-Hartley. We had more tools to be able to do things to help organize our workplaces. And look at what we were able to do. Create private pension funds, create health care that actually works for people. The government hasn't been able to do that since, and people are left on their own. And the only way to reorganize our working class is to change the game. The game has to change. I'll stop with this. I've been criticized within our union and within the movement for supporting something like Medicare for All. And I'll tell you why. Because our members actually do have an excellent health care system. But when I talk to our members, and every single time they get a raise, they have to put more off of their check into their own health care, they're more aligned with Medicare for All than maybe their union leaders who are afraid to take on something like that. And I use that as an example because even though union workers may have an advantage in this economy, they're still not getting by. And they're still struggling. We've got to reshape the entire landscape in order for us to really win and build a movement that can bring about change again. And that's what we have to learn how to do together. And if the labor movement doesn't involve itself in that, then I'm going to tell you right now, the labor movement won't survive.
The most important thing in this moment, building on what Jimmy just said, is that people wake up to our power. Because the corporate elite have money, and they use that money to take control. But they don't have power. They're not rich and powerful. That is a mirage. It is a sick story. Working people have power. We started tonight saying, not a wheel turns, not a thing moves without working people. And so I was looking out at my Teamster friends and thinking about being with Bob Henley at JFK 8, well, on the verge of another election at Amazon, and coming off of that great moment of this idea that workers can win. And I said, I feel like a prayer's been answered because I've been waiting my whole life for people to just wake up to their power and know that it's possible. Just when we come together, when we decide to exercise that power together, we can win every single time. So I think it's really important that as we have this discussion, that we're not talking about electoral politics as the place where we're going to win. We're going to win in the workplaces because we don't just live in a democracy. We live in a system of capitalism. And capitalism doesn't give a shit about anyone. It doesn't care about human beings. There is no equation of humanity in capitalism. And the only way that we put a check on that kind of unrelenting greed, because it's all about extracting more profits. That's why we are living in this system. That's why we don't have health care for everyone. They want people to be desperate. The 4 Ds of union busting: divide, delay, distract, and demoralize. The capitalists have been using that since the beginning of time. And if we call those out and we recognize those, we as working people can actually set the agenda every time. All we have to do is define the problem, set our demands, just go into any workplace, it's not that hard. Back up our demands with what we're willing to do and add urgency. And in this moment, this is a crisis that we're facing. But in a moment of crisis, there is also the ability for us to change things forever, to take over and set the agenda. And I don't want to understate how many people are going to get hurt. But we shouldn't understate how many people have been hurt by the wars that have been waged on our backs. We shouldn't understate how many people have been hurt by the way that people have cast aside one gender and tried to keep it under the thumb of the patriarchy. We shouldn't understate how Black and brown people have made less money and have had inability to have any generational wealth, to build up the life in this country that was promised to all of us. And so I think about, standing as a little kindergartner, 5 years old in Miss Muldoon's classroom, and looking up at that flag, and looking around at the other 5-year-olds, and thinking we're all making a solemn promise together to be indivisible with liberty and justice for all. And we have to make good on that promise, and we can now.
That was amazing. It's hard to follow up with just another question. But I think it's a relevant question because we find ourselves union density is under 10% for the first time in a really long time. It's been in, steady decline since the passage of Taft. I guess a little bit of a surge after World War II, but for many, many decades, the labor movement has been in steady decline. And the two of you both pointed to the need for boldness. We need boldness. And in the course, we studied a lot about the different periods in the struggle in the United States, using big strikes as markers of those eras. We talked about the great upheaval of 1877, the general strike wave of 1886 and the 8-hour day movement, the general strike wave of 1934, which, you know, to your point, Jimmy, and I think is glossed over in the history books, contributed to the passage of workers' right to organize. It wasn't just handed down.
You're saying the bosses came begging after that.
That's right, they did. And that's why they're so afraid
tremble.
of general strikes. You had the post-war strike wave of 45 and 46, a wave that had the most workers on strike in U.S. history, which would, if you adjust it for the size of the workforce today, would be roughly 15 million workers on strike in 1 year. It's amazing. And it's kind of crazy to think that we have to go that far back to talk about these big upheavals. But a common, in these strikes, I think is worth mentioning, are unlike most of the strikes that we see today, which isn't to say that those strikes aren't crucially important, but that these strikes became vessels for the aspirations of millions of workers beyond the workers who were at the center of the strike. It was a crusade, a political movement. And a common theme that was drawn out through all the various sessions was that things can feel so bleak, the movement so dead, so desperate, and then suddenly things can change so quickly. And I think we've talked about, when we've had the one-on-one interviews with both of you, we talked about this in great detail, and I think it's worth talking about with the full group. Under the right conditions, which I believe those conditions are starting to align today, but also with a even small but very dedicated, very effective group of organizers who are skilled but also have a political vision, things can change so quickly and so dramatically, and the labor movement can break open and become a major force in politics. So that gives me a great source of optimism, and I wonder, if we start with you, Sara, if the two of you feel the same way, and I mean, if the two of you feel the same way, and what gives you optimism, and if there are any other historical moments or reference points that ground that optimism.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that when people are struggling, they're also paying attention and they're having a common experience. And that is something that we can organize around right now and bring people together. And I think that it's going to have to be on the scale of grand organizing. Jimmy's talking about if we work in the constructs of what is in place today, we're never going to organize at a fast enough pace to grow. We're going to continue to shrink. We're going to have to be thinking bigger. And I can't help but think about, the baristas who are out on strike right now, inspiring a labor movement around the world. Around the world. I was on with UK activists last night, and they were saying it is incredible, and it sparked an entire wave of organizing at Starbucks in the UK. Just watching this strike happen, I think about my own union. After Ronald Reagan fired the air traffic controllers and made the strike a dirty word and told corporate America that it was open season time on unions and to draw working people into strikes that they couldn't win and to pass trade laws that will have people competing with labor that they can't compete with, and to really extract the power from our economy that creates a shared space and a shared economy. And I think about my own union in 1989, after that, deciding that we were going to go out on strike with the pilots, not to gain anything ourselves, but to show the bosses that we were willing to do it. And that was a really important moment, and that is the kind of atmosphere that I got to join the airline in. People were still carrying scab lists at a time when the strike was a dirty word, when nobody was talking about this, and very few people were doing it. And then fast forward to 2012, and Karen Lewis leading the Chicago Teachers Union in a strike that was about striking and bargaining for the common good and bringing the entire community together with it, and inspiring then teachers in West Virginia who didn't even have the right to collectively bargain, but decided that they were going to go out and strike across that state and set off a wave of strikes across red states all over this country, and inspiring grocery workers who then went out on strike and the strike started to come back and it became alive, and people are looking at that. And if you look at the chart of what had happened since 1981 when Ronald Reagan fired the air traffic controllers, and inequality went on a sharp line up, wages remained flat, and unions were essentially the inverse of that graph, going straight down. We shouldn't question why this is happening, right? But people, during that whole time from 1981, they kept voting for people, and it was Democrats and Republicans, and nothing changed. What changed? What changed was that working people had less power in the workplace. That's fundamentally what it is. And so that's what this moment can be. Again, this moment can be the 1930s again. This moment can be, we sit down and strike, we stand up and strike, we chaos strike, intermittent strikes. We can be creative as the working people. And I will tell you also, I would just end with this. I have been in a lot of boardrooms, and I have met with a lot of owners and a lot of managers. And I just want you to know, they do not have the corner market on smarts. We can out-organize these people. We can out-strategize these people. We can do that together.
Yeah, I think the moment's different. I think we should have been strategizing around, how we can withhold labor and choke capitalism for the last 70 years, but we haven't. We've been sleeping. But I do think it's time to wake the sleeping giant. And I think what needs to drive us is the moment we live in. And, I think back to a presentation that I've heard now 3 times from an expert on authoritarianism. And the moment that we live in requires us as a labor movement to think differently. But more importantly, one of the things that we looked at, and take away U.S. history for a minute, is that other democracies, when faced with this type of overreach, this type of what's truly a slide in our democracy towards authoritarianism, that the only recovery that has been successful is when there is a strong, robust labor movement that is willing to take lead and not leave it up to the challenging party, which in this instance would be the Democratic Party. We have to have an independence from. We have to focus on how we choke capitalism. We have to be strategic. We have to be long-lasting. One day is not going to work to choke capitalism. One day of a general strike will be a statement, and it won't be the thing that will cause a reaction. And we have to be very strategic and smart in how we think about doing this. I am a proponent of us calling for general strike that lasts for as long as it takes to get our demands. But I'm also a proponent, and I think we can learn within our movement, of what the UAW did within their own union on calling strikes and moving those strikes and moving them, if we did it movement-wide, industry by industry. Choking the billionaire class is the only way that we're going to get a reaction. And the last thing I'll say along these lines is people look to the labor movement for that. When we're only 10% of the workforce, people are going to laugh at us. Let's be real. But when you can start a fire in certain industries, that fire can grow to all industries. And I look at it like, imagine a day where you can say, we're going to shut down construction in this country until we get our demands. People will feel that. People will feel it. Same thing with, imagine if you can shut down retail and shut it down across the board, not just the union workers, right? How do we get more people engaged in this fight to realize their power? Here's the problem we have right now, is that the working class as a whole do not understand the power that they have. They don't understand their current rights at work. And in order to show a whole new generation of people how their withholding of labor can legitimately change the whole course of this country, maybe save it from an authoritarian, and build a world that looks better for the future, for the working class, it's going to require all of us. It's going to require such discipline amongst all of us to stick in, because one day is not going to make a difference. When there's that much money consolidated at the top, they will wait us out. We have to have people that are willing to hold the line, and we cannot count on our politicians on either side of the aisle to support us. It has to be organic. It has to be led through the working class, and the labor movement has to be front and center in doing it. And I'm telling you, the time is now. We can't wait until 2027, 2028. Can't wait for the perfect plan. There's no such thing. Any organizer in here knows that. You adjust, you adapt. But you have to build something different. And we got to start somewhere. And I do have, to Sara's point, it does inspire you when you see what's happening within Starbucks. And you go, that's great. But imagine when you can shut down all retail, period. And say, we're shutting it down. Or shut down construction. That's going to require that 77% of the working class that says they want the value of a union. Great. Now let's go see if we can build it. And all of our organizers should be working towards how can we reach out to more people that are not in the labor movement around those types of tools and strategies at this moment. Because that's how we can change things. And hopefully, for our children's sake, save democracy too.
Who's down to choke capitalism? I think the room is with us. And speaking of choking capitalism, and I want to close out with this question before we open it up for Q&A so we have time for other folks to ask questions. Trump, we've sort of repeatedly said over the course that Trump is trying to roll back the gains of the civil rights movement, the gains of the labor movement of the 30s, and take us back to the Gilded Age. Gross wealth inequality, corruption. And you would think that the opposition party, or supposed opposition-ish party, would grow in popularity under his term, but the Democratic Party is very unpopular. In fact, it is unpopular in record numbers. And I think that's the case particularly for young people who have seen, really for everyone, but particularly for young people who have seen that the Democrats have put up basically very minimal resistance to the Trump administration 1.0 and 2.0. And I think we've repeatedly said, young people support unions in record numbers as well. There's the 77% number for people under 30, it's 90%. Yeah, that's right. And they're not interested in tinkering around the edges anymore. 62% of young people, also a very interesting poll by the Cato Institute, support socialism. And shout out. Also give it up for socialism. And in my experience, young people support unions in 90% favorability, but are the least organized in unions. And there is no poll for this, but we can probably poll this room that if you are a young worker who's politically progressive, you're more likely, in a way, to be in another movement, in a social movement, in a different movement space, maybe even a socialist organization, than you are to be in a union or be organizing a union at your workplace or be going to get a job to organize a union at your workplace. But I don't say that negatively, like, oh, it's so bad that I'm young too, I think, getting old, but not there yet. We all are. But I don't say that as a bad thing. I actually see that as an opportunity. There's a political awakening among young people in this country who have been completely transformed by the crises and subsequent movements over the last 5 years, from the movement that you referenced, Jimmy, in 2020, the rebellions that erupted in response to the murder of George Floyd, to the movement in solidarity with Palestine in 2023. No student will be the same who went through that movement, who understands society in a totally different way than they did 3 years ago. Like there's a political awakening among young people, and there's an opportunity for the labor movement to tap into that political awakening, I believe, and channel it into building, motivate people to build the types of structural power that's associated with the labor movement. So I want to ask how you feel about this kind of phenomenon of this rapid politicization of a group of people who are the least organized when it comes to the workplace.
I'll go first on this one and let Sara close on. I think it's very, very fundamentally important that the labor movement uses its voice. Because, look, at the end of the day, oftentimes in certain elections, yes, you had to hold your nose and vote for a Democrat. And unfortunately, whenever you hold your nose and vote for somebody you don't want to, you can't really be excited when the outcome is they won. And that's been my experience. I'm 47 years old. I say it all the time. Bill Clinton didn't do shit to help labor unions. Barack Obama didn't do shit to help labor unions when he could have. Joe Biden, for a brief moment in time, actually did, but it didn't matter. It was too far gone. The Democratic Party has already been baked in as being out of touch. And as somebody from within, listen, as a labor leader, yeah, it's great. You get to go sit with a congressperson, senator, governor, whomever. You know what? The Democratic Party is equally as controlled by the billionaire class as the Republican Party is controlled by the oligarchs. It should not be hard for labor unions to say we are independent of either political party, and we stand for our membership, period. And if that takes us in places that we're uncomfortable, we'll get uncomfortable. I mean, listen, you got a track record with the Democratic Party. It's right in front of you. And yes, oftentimes you got to align with them because it's the choice of, do you want to be destroyed or do you just want to be left alone? But you know what? I don't give a shit anymore. Sometimes you got to say, take risk. Tell those people no too until they get the money. Until they get corporate money out of their party, they're not a party for working people, period. It's that simple. And that don't make it right or wrong. It just is what it is. And sometimes you just got to speak truth in the movement. And our movement needs to do that now. Because if we go back to the old Democratic Party, which is still what's there, and you wonder why their ratings are so bad, you wonder why more young people identify as independent, and yes, leaning socialist, but independent. More and more of our members within our union that are older, in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, have, and this is the reality of our membership, they voted for Barack Obama, they voted for Donald Trump, they voted for Joe Biden, and they voted for Donald Trump again. It's the reality of at least half of our members within our union. You know what it is? They don't know where to turn. They have nowhere to turn. They look at both political parties and say, they do not represent me. I'm willing to blow it up. I'm willing to roll the dice on this nonsense, and then they just go to work the next day. They have to see a better alternative. I've yet to see it from the national leadership within the Democratic Party. So putting that aside for a moment, when it comes to how we play our politics, we have to be bold there too. And we have to be able to say that we are not, and here's the other thing, I hear it from our membership. They go, listen, the union is just a wing of the Democratic Party. And then I hear from the Democrats that feel like we're a wing of their party too. It's a lose-lose proposition. So the best thing you can do is say, we're not controlled by either one of yous, and step the hell away from them and start building something different. Listen, our movement cannot rely on the whims of the way the political wind blows in this country. And I cannot stand the amount of times that I've seen labor leaders put all of their eggs in a politician's bucket. There is no reason to. Listen, they got their job to do. We have ours to do. I don't care what party they come from. We have to hold them accountable if they're in office. And if they don't do the right thing for us, we got to run them out of office. And we got to run more progressive candidates against those on the Democratic side often. And look, New York City is the best example of where you've seen somebody take down the same loser Democrat twice. And that's what it's going to take. It's going to take from within. Donald Trump built a movement within the Republican Party within less than 10 years. And he purged the Republican Party, or he made those that wanted to hold power follow suit with him. The Democratic Party and their Big Ten of corporate money, it's not going to work. Something's got to be different. And the labor movement has to be willing to be independent of both parties, in my opinion.
So the great news about the next generation is that the next generation knows that the system doesn't work. And so we don't have to hear, we're going to do it this way because we've always done it that way. We get to build something entirely new. And I think I'm so grateful. I was going to say we haven't mentioned Mamdani yet, but we have to. Because this was about rejecting the idea that we should be just paying attention to polls and people should be telling us who is electable and who is not. Look at what can happen when you just believe that you can do something different. Look at what can happen when you just go out into the neighborhoods and ask people, how are you doing? What's your issues? What's going on with you? How can I help? Look at what we can build in a year's time if we just decide to do it. And people are excited. And then, you know, that power, when that power is truly with the people, and to me, this election here in New York was about showing that this city belongs to the people. Look at the power of the people that was on display today at the White House. The emperor has no clothes. Mamdani knows it, and so does the emperor know that Mamdani knows it. Said, that's okay, you can call me a fascist, I am one. Totally exposed by the power of the people. So let's be clear. When Zoran walked into that office, he didn't walk in as a single man. He walked in with the people of New York. And that's the kind of movement that we can build if we simply decide to. That's the kind of movement that we can build if we make sure that young people are able to lead us forward. Because young people are not encumbered with what came before. We only have the vision of what we have to do for tomorrow. I was really lucky to grow up in Oregon and be able to love animals, run in the grass, swim in the waters. And I think about Mother Jones too, and as I say that young people have to lead the way, and we have to make it possible for that to happen. I also I don't want people to get fixated on age. Because if we do that too, we're missing the boat. Because who has helped to raise the consciousness of what the trade union movement can do more than Bernie Sanders? Who helped at the turn of the last century more to raise the consciousness of the kind of world that we should have than Mother Jones, organizing all over this country, nearly 100 years old herself, saying the capitalists say there is no need of labor organizing except the fact that they themselves are continually organizing shows us their real beliefs. The capitalists want the most amount of labor for the least amount of money, including slavery. Labor wants the most amount of money for the least amount of labor. Be proud of that. As there's innovations, it goes in our pockets too. She said, labor built the world's palaces and created all the wealth, but neither dwells in those palaces nor spends that wealth. If you would only understand that you hold the whole solution in your hand. If, for example, every worker were to simply hold up and stop working, the capitalists would yield to any and all demands because the world could simply not go on. This next generation has the ability to spread that word and to stay focused on the fact that we are not going to stop until we're not going to ever stop, by the way. Capitalists, hear us now. We're not going to ever stop, okay? There is no fucking labor peace. But we're going to set out clear demands. We're not going to settle for something around the edges. Every single person deserves health care. Every single person deserves a decent home. Every single person deserves a job with a living wage and the ability to join a union. Every single person deserves the right to an education without a death sentence. Every single person deserves to swim in the water and drink it and run in their fields and enjoy life. And so I know, to answer your question fully, that this next generation is the most able to see that because they see how broken it is and the world that they have to build.
Thank you both so much for that panel Q&A. And with that, I think we should open it up for the crowd. Saidi, you'll direct it. We'll take maybe, 3 or 4, 5 at a time? Does that feel good? 5 at a time. Why not? 4, okay. All right, 4 at a time.
Where we are. Okay, awesome. Raise your hands. I have 2 mic runners, so some on this side and some on this side. All right, we'll start with one question right here, and then we'll go to this side, and then I'll take these 2 at the front.
Thank you. Sorry, you're so close to me.
No, you're good.
Hi, thank you so much for this incredible panel. It was so energizing. I have a question about this idea of this general strike that's really been spreading like wildfire. So I want to, hear what you guys think about it, why it's spreading, why you think it's spreading, and how we can make it possible. Thanks.
Great. Thank you all for the panel. I thought it was extremely inspiring. I want to pick up on the question of politics and the two-party system because you all are going pretty hard, and I appreciate that. But I think it's also like a natural conclusion or endpoint for any social movement to ask the question of political power because you look and see the tax dollars in this country, for example, being used to fund endless wars when they could be funding a federal jobs program that creates union jobs to rebuild the infrastructure or create a public renewable energy grid or whatever else. And so it's true that we obviously have a lot of power in the labor movement and in people's movements in general. And also there's this natural question of how do we actually get political power so that the government prioritizes meeting people's needs instead of just the billionaires' needs. And when you look at the Democratic Party today, I mean, y'all already went really hard, but Zoran obviously met with Donald Trump at the White House today. And he's like probably the most popular politician in the country right now. And he's openly identifies as a democratic socialist. And this morning, the House Democrats, 86 of them, voted to denounce the horrors of socialism. And so it's like you couldn't tell that they have this dynamic generational politician in their own party, and they're just trying to completely undermine him, uproot him, and really tell him and anybody else who believes that capitalism is a scourge on humanity that the Democratic Party is no place for you. And so I guess I have a question as it relates to the political horizon that we set as working people in this country when the Democratic and Republican parties both seem like a dead end for working people. And also you have these polls that come out every year that say something like 66% of US adults support the need for a third party. And it's been the case since at least 2012. The majority of people think that there should be another political way, but it's very difficult within this current system. So I just would like y'all to speak more on that if you can, the question of the political horizon and not only being independent from the Democrats and Republicans, but how do we actually build a political movement that can push our government to be one that represents working class people instead of the interests of billionaires? And is a third party the answer? What does it mean for the labor movement to build political power in a context where both parties are the playgrounds of billionaires?
I want to thank you for being here. I'm a graduate student, labor studies. By the way, I'm looking also for funding for my studies, just throwing that out there. But while he's talking about political parties, there will never be a third party in the U.S. So to what Jimmy said, if you cannot depend on the politician, the Democrats, whoever they are, the Republican, the Independent, who can we work with? Is it the clergy? Can we go back to W.E. Du Bois' general strike? Can we go back to Memphis sanitation workers? How do you solve it? The European labor union are really powerful, but there is one problem. They have their own political party. That doesn't work in the U.S. How do you solve it? General strike, part 3. How do you get it? Do you get the healthcare workers? Do you get the retail? Do you get Starbucks? All of them. Everyone. Everyone that even Sara mentioned that are not part of the labor union. Get them together. How does that work?
Thank you all for the great presentation and the question and answers. I was wondering, about a year ago, Donald Trump was running on, the union workers are for Trump. The U.S. Steel was going to be sold by the CEOs, and it went to Japan eventually. But Donald Trump was promising that, hey, look, we're going to keep United States Steel under the ownership of a U.S. corporation, and the United Steelworkers Union was also supporting that in different ways. And he was able to play he was able to win the influence of a good deal of union workers, especially in the Rust Belt. So my question is that, what do you guys see as like the future for union workers, especially the push to reshore industry? Unions can play a role in that, positive or negative. What are the prospects?
Let's take one or two more. So back right corner, and then we'll see where we are on time.
Hi, Antonio Rosario, 31-year Teamster. I appreciate everything you guys said up there. Thank you. Let me ask my question, y'all. I've been watching, what you guys were talking about was pretty serious. When you think about the No Kings March and how many millions of people hit the streets, and I loved it. It was inspiring. I was part of some of those marches. It was amazing. I'm no newcomer to civil disobedience. What do you guys think it's going to take that energy? And in my opinion, Elon Musk thinks he's a king. Jeff Bezos thinks he's a fucking king. When are we going to use that energy and shut down bridges, walk around Amazon facilities, help the Starbucks workers, just like what you guys were saying, like bringing it all together. Millions of people just taking a day to really hit them in their pockets, which is what they really care about, right? So I've been flirting with this idea for quite some time, since I've been watching these amazing marches that have been really beautiful, but to like really move them in a way that labor's kind of taking them to places where we're really gonna fuck them up. That's where I'm at. So I just wanted to get some ideas on that. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to try to handle a lot of these concepts really fast. First of all, the general strike is an important idea, okay? that is the idea that is traveling everywhere. When we talk about people like just waking up to their power, that conversation is so important. It's important to encourage that, to foment that, to come to tables to talk about how you organize for that. But we can't set a general strike, like Jimmy said, like we set an arbitrary date for an election. We just can't. What we have to do is we have to be organizing, and we have to, and so it's an important conversation, and it's an important idea to put out there. I mean, I'll say it all day long, but it's really about people waking up to what's possible. And if we are organizing around that, and we're organizing for that moment, we have to see the moments that come and be ready to move on them right away. So in terms of the political party and everything, the reality is that this is a distraction. And I will just use Trump as an example, okay? Trump is totally unencumbered by truth, right? So he can say whatever he wants. He can promise anybody anything they want. And I went over to the UK and they're like, oh, we love him because he says what he wants. He says what he believes. People want to hear what you really believe. They do not want a polling answer. They want reality. They want to connect with other human beings. We are fed all this idea that we don't want to be together, that we want to just be with our screens. It's bullshit, okay? We want to be together. But in terms of the political parties, what we have to recognize is it is the billionaires and it is the working class. And nothing is going to change until we recognize that Elon Musk answers to no one except for when the workers at X and Tesla and SpaceX organize. Then he has to answer to the workers. Jeff Bezos answers to no one until Amazon workers are organized and make him have to come to the table. That is the political party that we have to build, and that actually will recenter the politics. It used to be that the political parties were more centered on labor. That was because there was a larger voting bloc and people who understood that we're going to mess you up if you mess with us. And so that is the kind of energy that we have to build. And I will just say all day long, as much as I would love to have a real, not like the UK, but as much as we can, I would like to have a real working people's party, right? That is nationwide. If we spend our time focused on that, we're just dividing ourselves up more. And we're just playing into their tactics of the 4Ds. So what's really important is that we figure out how to organize in our workplaces and take the money back from the billionaires. And I will just add that it's really important that every single person grab a copy of The Deficit Myth, the book, watch the documentary Finding the Money, and recognize too that even the way that they talk about the money that is our money, where did money come from? It came from our government. It's our government. We own it. It's our money. Elon Musk stole our money. Jeff Bezos stole our money. Bill Gates stole our money. This is just, if we center in our workplaces and take them on, we build the political power to take back our money, to take back our time. And that's what we have to be doing. And I don't remember the other questions. Right? Oh, Antonio, we are going to not give away all of our tactics. I love that you're asking about the creative tactics that we're going to use. But I just want to put the bosses on notice. You won't see us coming until you hit the ground.
Yeah, I mean, I'll react to all five of them. They were very similar, though, in talking about the politics and the general strike. We're kind of at the middle of all of it. I would say this. I mean, let me ask a question in the room. Do you think there's a Republican Party anymore? Do you think there is a Republican Party in this country?
There's 6 congressmen that signed on to the discharge petition to undo Trump's executive order on taking away collective bargaining. That would be about it.
Yeah, but I'm going back to a point I think I tried to make earlier. Donald Trump has taken over, single-handedly taken over the Republican Party with an extreme right, authoritarian type view of the world, controlled by the richest people on the globe, right? And he did so in 10 years. And I keep going back to, it is doable to reorganize the Democratic Party, but we have to be very disciplined in doing it. And we have to tell them when they're wrong. Donald Trump literally removed 18 qualified people that were running for president in 2016 by calling them out on what they believed on the right was some bullshit. I didn't agree with any of them. I didn't agree with all 19 of them that ran, right? But he systematically tore down an institution, which was the Republican Party. We have to approach reorganizing the Democratic Party the same way. We cannot just try to work with those that are willing to tell us, here at Building Trades, we'll give you a project labor agreement, but we're not going to support this over here. Or we're not going to support other initiatives that are important to other workers in other unions or non-union workers. We can't do that because we have done that for the last 100 or some years with these two parties. We really do have to organize a Democratic Party. It's a reason why someone like Bernie Sanders ran for president as a Democrat. It's a reason why Zoran ran in the primary as a Democrat. We can overtake the party under our values if we're willing to fight together, which means we got to give up some of our personal stuff, right? Listen, I'm a construction worker. I want to build whatever the hell they want to build so that our members can go to work. But if we're not building affordable housing, we got to be willing to say we're not going to support those projects unless they have affordability in them and they can put working class people back on a road as opposed to our members just going to work. We have to be willing to take bold stands when it comes to energy. Nobody was put in the crosshairs more than the building trades for the last 10, 20 years when it came to the Keystone Pipeline and old energy versus what's going to make our planet safer for our children. We have to be willing within a union like mine to say, no, we're not going to support energy policies that could destroy our planet and hold politicians accountable. And I use those examples because they're real in my industry. But every industry has to look at that. Every labor leader has to be willing to give something up in order to win something for the common good. And as a movement, we have to be willing to be in rooms that may make us uncomfortable sometimes. And when I think about that conversation around how the billionaire class has been able to divide us, we cannot have that conversation without talking about race and how race has been used to divide each and every one of us, sector by sector, worker by worker. And it's not just race, it's gender. And we have to show a different way forward within our movement about how we can build something that is multiracial, multi-generational, multi-gendered, and we have to do it now. We can't wait. When it comes to the idea of a general strike, we have to pick our demands, and we got to be creative. I come from Pennsylvania. Every presidential election comes through the state of Pennsylvania, right? It's such a swing state. The minimum wage in Pennsylvania is $7.25. There is a one vote difference in the Senate in the state of Pennsylvania, and there is a one vote difference in the House in the state of Pennsylvania. One's Democrat, one's Republican. And you have a Democratic governor who wants to be president of the United States someday. We should make a demand in a state like the state of Pennsylvania to raise the minimum wage to $20 an hour and be willing to shut things down in order to do it. Trust me, if we organized amongst the workforce in the state of Pennsylvania and said our demand is $20 an hour at a minimum, not give me 3 years to get there, or not, $15 an hour, screw that, $20 an hour, and we're going to work like hell to shut down every sector of the economy in the private sector until we get it, I guarantee you both Democrats and Republicans would be shaking in their boots. I guarantee you if we actually pulled something like that off, it would spark a movement in other places to take similar efforts, and that would put the capitalists in this country on notice, Donald Trump would threaten to call the National Guard by day 3. He'd probably do it before we even made our demands, once he heard about them. And we have to be able to have that type of willingness. You know, I really think that our history can guide our future. Our history is rooted in a long-term struggle. And we can't have instant gratification anymore in our movement. We have to be willing to teach workers that the struggle is not one day. The struggle is not show up for a rally. Rallies don't organize. Rallies send statements, and it's good to have them. But until we can convince a percentage of the workforce to withhold their labor, we got to show them how it's done. Do it in roving ways. Pick a city in this country that hasn't advanced something like the minimum wage or something else, whether it be affordable housing or subsidized housing, and shut it down and start building upon that. And I think once you build that, attaining a general strike becomes so much easier to make a big and bold demand. And you know what that bold demand may have to be? It may have to be to get Donald Trump to leave the White House in 2028. That's how serious this shit is. Because this man has no intention of leaving the White House in 2028. And if we have to build a movement that leads up to a general strike, depending upon how our politics play out, trust me, we're going to need it then. And we're going to need millions of workers on the street to save our democracy.
I think we have time for maybe 3 more questions, and then we'll send it back to the 2 of you for closing. Does that sound good?
All right, awesome. I've neglected the back a little bit, so I'm going to start there, and then we'll take 3.
Hi, y'all. This has been incredible. Forgive me, I wrote them down. I loved both of the stories you shared about organizing for the detained DACA recipient during the George Floyd uprisings, of having people being forced to change their mind. Think of your brother, think of your union leader, think of, oh, this is someone that I can identify with. We've talked about how low union membership rates are, how many people have been taught, go to work, go home, keep your head down, and also how atomized we are, especially with gig economy and freelance. In your experience as organizers, as union leaders, how have you gone about politicizing people in your unions and people adjacent that, you know, we want to get support from, to think of themselves not just as individuals, but as workers who belong to this greater project?
Thank you for this talk. I'm with UAW 2710. We represent student workers at Columbia. So I'm here with a couple members, and 50% of our unit is international students, so immigrants. Many of our members have been under attack, marked for deportation. At the same time, Trump Project 2025 is trying to make it take away our right to unionize. We recently passed an article which asks for basic rights for international students. So tell us if ICE is going to be on campus, and please do not give our members data to the government unless you absolutely have to. And rather than responding to us, the university just sent an email blast out to the entire university saying this union is made up of stupid children who shouldn't even be asking this. And, it's a really scary time for our local for all the above reasons. And, a lot of our workers are really scared, so much so that, they'll say, oh, it is just a permissive subject of bargaining. It's not mandatory. Maybe we just shouldn't ask for it. So I guess my question to you, and maybe hopefully for the benefit of all the union organizers here, is that, how do we turn scared workers who are under attack into workers that fight back and will go on the attack?
And then one, perfect.
Okay. My name is Nalia, and this is my cousin Yanis. Say hi. Hi. We're 10 years old, and we just wanted to say thanks for informing us on labor rights. My auntie is an Amazon driver, and and we just came from striking. And we just came from striking with the Starbucks workers because when workers fight, we win.
Nothing can follow that up. I'll pass it back over.
What were the two questions?
One was, I guess, like.
Yeah, and I think to tie two things together, I don't think we went deep enough into the struggle right now for immigrant workers in this country, right? In this conversation, we touched on it, but we didn't go deep. I know within our union, we have probably on any given day, 20 to 25% of our members are either, questionable status, have, some sort of form of TPS, deferred action. They've lost a lot of their, rights in this country. And I know they go to work every single day scared. I just got back from Los Angeles last night. Nobody even talks about LA anymore. Talk about Chicago, talk about Charlotte. LA is legitimately still ground zero for the ICE raids that are going on. And within our membership, I can tell you I've never seen a period of time where people are more scared. And my answer to that, oftentimes when talking to our members, is that it is our role to protect those that should not speak out in this environment. It's that risky. Just last week, we had 4 members of our union, and this is how they've done it. 2 in Minneapolis, 1 in LA, and 1 in Chicago. An ICE agent goes on a job site, looks around the job site, identifies racially profiles people working, follows them home, and the next morning on the way to work, local law enforcement pulls them over. That is happening in our country. How, as a union leader, can I advise somebody who finds himself in a similar position to speak out, right? I cannot. But I certainly can try to inspire the 80% of our union that doesn't find themselves in that position to speak out and speak out strongly. I've spoken to so many members of ours that probably voted for Donald Trump in this last election and go, I did not vote for this. To Sara's point earlier, in 2016 when they had to support their member that was being held up, that is a game changer amongst our members. When the person that they work side by side with has been removed, it changes the whole dynamic. In our industry, it's about safety, it's about working together, right? We have people that are hanging off bridges, painting them, and they go, I need that person to my left. I need that person to my right in order to go home at night safely to my family. And they're not here anymore. And that has changed the dynamic. And if I can give any advice, those of us that have a voice in this country, we got to use it now for those that don't. And it's more and more every single day. What was the other question? Yeah, I'll say this on education. Last thing. In our union, what we have done, and I do this every week, similar to the program that you all have went through, we are educating our members around the history of our movement, right? And I can tell you, we go through the charts, we show them, and we talk about Taft-Hartley. We talk about the PATCO strike. We talk about McCarthyism. We talk about corporate greed and how corporations have consolidated. And a lot of people are hearing it for their first time. You would think that a union member may have already heard these things. Let me tell you something. That's not the case. Most people join a union looking for a job. They don't join a union looking for a movement. And it's our job as union leaders to do that grassroots education amongst our members, to prepare our members for when that moment comes that we're going to have to go into action like we never have before. And I can tell you, they don't teach this shit in school anymore. They don't talk about Taft-Hartley. They don't talk about McCarthyism. Well, they do, and they call us the communists and the out-of-touch people, right? Our education with our members touching on those roots and then tying it to changing their values and building a values-based organization with our union is truly grassroots power building within our union that I think every union needs to consider how we build that type of connection to our movement, because it ties directly to the rights that are under attack right now and that they need to be aware of.
The only way to overcome fear is by building solidarity. It's a force stronger than gravity, and when we practice it, it lifts us up. And I think about when I really got involved in the union, and a mentor suggested that I read the autobiography of Mother Jones. And it was really, it was just a book about building solidarity. About understanding that if you're going to go on strike at the mines, you got to have the farmers on your side too. And understanding that when the men are scared, you call out the women and show them how it's done. Just saying. No, I think about the mine workers that Mother Jones was organizing and a part of encouraging. And I think about the Ludlow strikers. Who, before they had the right to join the union in Colorado, were out striking against the coal barons and fighting for the right to just enforce the laws that were in place in Colorado at the time. And they were out in a tent city outside the mines because also the mine workers, the mine owners required them to stay in company housing and see the company doctor and be totally beholden their entire lives. Essentially indentured servants to these mine owners. And they're out there striking for their demands. And what do the bosses do but call in the Pinkertons and call in the National Guard to come and police them, and then to shoot at them, and then to burn the tent cities and burn women and children alive. And they were out there, in that tent city, there were 28 different languages spoken because this was all immigrants in this work site. And the boss had specifically hired people from different countries in the hopes that it would be another union-busting tool, that people would not be able to communicate with each other. But when there were mine disasters and a mother was comforting her children about how their father wasn't coming home and their whole source of income for the family was gone, you didn't have to speak the same language to see what was in each other's hearts. And so I think about that also just in our workplace, and I think about just going to the fundamentals of organizing. Don't cast those things aside. Those mine workers built up our entire labor movement. And what did we do when people said that they were the problem with climate change, even though they were the first ones to take on the boss to say, stop poisoning our water, stop poisoning our land, let us live free and be able to breathe? They were the first environmentalists. And instead, we allowed the bosses to make them the enemy and to say that they were the problem. And when the politicians talked about them as people who should just get over it because those are filthy jobs, why do you want them anyway? The first thing you do when you go to any gathering is you say, what do you do? People take pride in that. When we see other workers being demonized, we need to rush to their side. We need to recognize that the federal workers who were put in the crosshairs were not the fucking problem at the shutdown. We needed to rush to their side when their contracts were extinguished. And when they were used as pawns in a political game that nobody had a plan to win. We can't allow the boss to make workers the problem. But here's the good news. When we encourage people to come out for someone else's fight and be a part of fighting, they own that fight too. And when they win, they feel it more. And so I think about being in the middle of the United Airlines bankruptcy, and we had to fight for our pensions. And there were flight attendants coming to me and saying, but they won't let us wear comfortable shoes. And I'm thinking, they're holding the planes together with duct tape, for God's sakes. Put on your comfortable shoes and get out on the picket line for our pensions. But I mean, this is really important, because you cannot just go in and tell people what they're supposed to believe or what they're supposed to do. You have to go in and listen to them and hear what their concerns are and rush to their side and build solidarity, build a plan to fight on the issues that matter to them. And we did. We built a petition, and you know what? I did. When I started flying, I had to wear 2-inch heels. It's ridiculous. And we fought, and we won that in 30 days, and we stamped out the fact that you couldn't wear comfortable shoes on the plane. But you know what that did? That allowed us the next month to say, we need to fight for this thing that feels overwhelming, that even the power of the bankruptcy court can take away from us. And everyone, all the other unions are telling us it's not worth the fight because management has all the power to win. And because we had listened to what our members cared about and organized around that first, they listened to us on the pension issue, and then we turned out a 99% strike vote to try to save our pensions. And you know what? The company still ran away with them, but we generated enough power to double the retirement plan that they were willing to pay, and we saved retiree health care. So it is really as simple as getting down to the organizing principles of saying, if there's a rally, I'm going to bring somebody with me. If there's a group of people who I think are not going to identify with my political issues, I'm going to go talk to them. If there's somebody who is hurting and I don't know how to help them, I'm going to go ask them. And when we do that and we say, hey, let's go out to this other fight, we start to think about going to the next fight and the next fight, and we start to create that kind of energy. That is what happened. If anybody is watching Ken Burns' The American Revolution, you will see that is the kind of conversations that were going on all over this country, everywhere. There was a political awakening that we could actually achieve this idea that we can all experience the greatness of working together. That was the idea that's never fully been realized, but that exists right here and is why people have come here and is why we should make sure that people can stay here. So I really encourage all of you not to give up on your neighbors. Definitely not to give up on your coworkers. And to find a fight that you know nothing about and go find out what it is and stand by their side. And tell other people to do the same. And those are the fundamental things that we have to do to build up the kind of power that we need to win the world that we want to have.
Thank you both for those super powerful words. I feel like this is a shared feeling across the room that I'm overcome by a sense of great optimism, even though there's a lot to say about the current moment that's really doom and gloom. I think one thing that the various historical points we've all referenced, I'm glad that the two of you believe that we could actually be entering a period that's akin in some ways to the 1930s. And to me, two things that really stand out as key variables in making those types of movements possible are, one, a moment that isn't totally within our control. Like, we can't control every single attack. Trump is he makes decisions a lot of times based on what's in his view, what's in his line of sight, and then boom, there's another executive order. Some of that stuff we can't control. We can't control the exact alignment of factors that leads to a moment where there's total outrage across the country, no matter how good of deep organizing you can do. But then there's another element that is within our control, which may not make up that big of a percentage of a potential upheaval, maybe 2% that we can control, but it ends up being decisive, which is a group of people with a vision and an organization that's prepared to seize on that type of moment. And the reason why I'm so optimistic is there are like 250, 300 people in this room who are here on a Friday night who are ready to go and promote that vision coming out of this meeting. So before we close out with the performance from Lingua Franca, I want to give Sara and Jimmy, the two of you, to any last words that you wanted to say that you couldn't quite get to in the structure of the questions before we move to a close.
Sure, I'll go first. I think we live in this world of just constant angst, constant struggle. And I think oftentimes we're looking for that moment of that's going to bring us that clarity, or it's going to be that thing that shifts. And I would just caution everybody in this room to thinking that is possible. The deep organizing that it's going to take for us to really win what we need to win starts with those one-on-one conversations with people, right? It just does. Because we're going to have victories. We're going to have losses. We've had more losses than we've had in victories. But when you look at our history as a working class in this country, you got to be able to recognize the fact that today is very similar, yet it feels different. And it feels different by design, right? Being overwhelmed and feeling overwhelmed on a daily, constant basis is the tool that the boss is using today to make us all get tired and fatigued and want to give up sometimes. That is by design. It is. When you think about the 1930s, the difference between today's bosses and in the 1930s is they had to face their workers. If you worked in a steel mill, you lived in a company town, you had to buy your goods off of the boss. The boss's house was right up the hill. You could see where the boss lived. You saw that type of wealth. Today's working class doesn't see this type of wealth, but yet your phones are controlled by it. Everything you consume is controlled by this type of wealth. Everything. And it's designed, all of the tools that the boss is using today is designed to get you to feel hopeless. And guess what? Those workers back in the 1920s and 1930s, they had their moments of feeling hopeless too. They did, for sure. They lived in some of the worst economic times in this country's history. They lived through them. We're in that same time period. And the only thing I can say is don't feel hopeless. Feel hopeful that it can't get any worse. And the only way for us to make it better is to lead with love, have hope for the future, reach out to somebody that you've never worked with before and give them a chance. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is our future. Let's not get hung up on the old fights of the past. Let's build a future for tomorrow that looks different than what it did in the past. And let's build something stronger. It was an absolute pleasure to be here tonight with all of you.
As a tactical matter, I think it's really important that we recognize that Donald Trump is not the target. Okay? Our lives and our hearts are what matters. But quite seriously, though, when I said earlier that he's unencumbered by truth and he doesn't have any kind of risk aversion, it's true. And so that is not where you attack, because that person is always going to come back. And the bosses are always doing a risk analysis of should they do the deal or should they not do the deal. So look for the weak spots. We did that at the beginning of this administration. Who was the weak spot? The guy with the chainsaw, okay? And all over this country, we sparked a movement of Tesla takedown, and certainly was alive and well in this city. And it made a difference. We chased him out. Now, he left a wake of destruction in his path, but feel that win, okay? And also recognize that that was the weak spot. That's where we needed to aim. and we needed to be exacting about that. So I just really encourage everyone, don't aim at the place where the person is trying to be Teflon for everyone else. Aim at the enablers, because they're the problem. And they're also the weak ones who are not willing to stand out front. And the person in front cannot exist without them. So just remember, it is we who plowed the prairies, built the cities where they trade, dug the mines and built the workshops, endless miles of railroad laid. Now we stand outcast and starving midst the wonders we have made, but the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever, solidarity forever, solidarity forever, for the union makes us strong, 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 strong.
All right. Thank you so much, Hussein, Sara, and Jimmy. Keep it going. Come on, keep it going. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this course. And now, before we close out, I want to pass it out to our dear friend, Lingua Franca. Hey. How y'all feeling? This ain't business usual, boss. Nah, y'all ain't finna continue to use us as pawns. We coming for ours. Stacking double using this John. We coming for everything in a union for all. Hey, this ain't business usual, boss. Nah, y'all ain't finna continue to use us as pawns. We coming for ours. Stacking double using this John. We coming for everything in a union for all. Cause we providing the child care. We the baggage handlers. We care for your elders. We security. We janitors. We making the campus work. Stacking hamburgers. And now we standing up. Cause every worker on the planet Earth deserves to really thrive with a union for all. We coming for 25 in a union for all. We coming for 35 in a union for all. We coming for everything in a union for all. Courageousness even when it's dangerous to agitate. We've been hiking to fight the wages since 2008. When we changed system, wondering whether the patrons came in singing how to 725 and now we're paying the rent. It's David and Goliath, we the ones that are giants. Simply an unbeatable alliance. We bargaining together cause we scraping when dividing. It's okay to be afraid, but it's better when you're beside us, residing. Hey, the same is as usual, boss. Nah, y'all ain't finna continue to use us as pawns. We coming for ours. Stacking double using this John. We coming for everything. And here we all. Hey, the same is as usual, boss. Y'all ain't finna continue to use us as pawns. We coming for ours. Stacking double using this John. We coming for everything. And a union for all. We coming for child care. And a union for all. We coming for higher ed. And a union for all. We coming for housing. And a union for all. We coming for everything. We coming for retirement and a union for all. We coming for good schools. We coming for everything. We coming for everything in a union for all. Hey! All right, now I gotta shout out my people at home. Paul, Katie, Seven, Nova, my crew with the USSW. Organizing the South. Which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on? Let me hear you say, which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on? Let me hear you say, are you on, my people? Which side are you on? Everybody say, oh, my people, which side are you on? Cause workers ship the boxes, we Swiffer and we mop and look chipper whenever talking, whipping the shopping carts, we stack the beer in the walk-ins, pack the weird little cartons, keep our kitchen fridges stocked, our financial market sells it, we clocking over 50 bucks, bear the coffin of like 60 thrifty chuds, get spit
sound like sitting ducks. We are sick of getting fucked. So you ever wanted to honor them? Here's my ask for all my hominids. Collective bargaining. Amazon and Target and FedEx and Walmart, Instacart and Whole Foods, till we all get what we ought to get. Workers run the company. There isn't any argument, so are you with them? Are you in? El Pueblo Unido, jamás será vencido. El Pueblo Unido, jamás será vencido. El Pueblo Unido, jamás será vencido. Jamás será vencido. Jamás será vencido. Which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on? Let me hear you say. Oh, my people, which side are you on? Let me hear you say. My people, side are you on? Let me hear you say. Imagine a minute, millions of average women and men in the tragic position of trading passion for wages and cash till they shackled by capitalism. Imagine a minute, millions of average citizens played in the spinach, watching the kitchens and sacking the linens, contractors and renters and tenants, labor extracted for pittance. What if they coordinated to address the sort of state of it in an organization? Cause fucking what? That's what organized labor does, and not even sort of, it's more of the crux. Taking the power of importers of bucks, bakers off floor and they cut, returning the value of labor to those who created the billionaires over to us. So if you dated an early but waking up early to earn a bag, be sad about Bernie if you got a curious unit. I know we're passively lurking, we got your back and we happy to have you out on the picket line if the really work can go. Which side are you on? Everybody say! My people, which side are you? Let me hear you say. Keep it going, keep it going, keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. El Pueblo Unido, jamás será vencido. El Pueblo Unido, jamás será vencido. El Pueblo Unido, jamás será vencido. Jamás será vencido. Jamás será vencido. Which side are you? Which side are you on? TPF, I think I know which side y'all are on.
All right, everybody. I'm not going to hold you up too much longer, but thank you so much for joining us for this panel. Thank you so much for joining us for this class. If this is your first time here, if you've been here before, check out the books. We have a bunch of labor books. Check out the Union Power Soul Power shirt, and keep up to date with Labor on the Line. If this is your first time interacting with them, don't let it be your last. Please find anybody here and find out how to stay in touch. Thank you.